Hey friends, Matthew Pilling here, Chief Overthinker at A Pilling Perspective. Thank you for joining us today. Got some interesting stuff to cover, so stick with us, hit like, hit subscribe. Feel free to share this with others. We're going to overthink a little bit about solving problems, specifically in regards to accomplishing goals, less about the steps of how to accomplish the goal, and a little bit more about how do we think about the problem solving differently. How do we reduce friction by changing how we approach the problems? But yeah, let's jump right in. I've heard it said before, and I'm sure you have as well, in the self help industry, that if we want to get somewhere, we need to focus on the end state. We need to look at where we're trying to go and feel now what that will feel like as though it's already accomplished. We need to take that future self and pull it into today and feel that and explore it and start programming those feelings and thoughts into our subconscious so that we can project ourselves back out into that future and bring that future to ourselves. And I don't disagree with that, but I know there are things I have tried to accomplish in my life that were completely new ground for me. And that idea of feeling what the future is going to feel like seemed really daunting because I didn't know. I'd never accomplished it. I didn't know what that was going to feel like. Multiply that by the idea that I believe Peter Drucker shared, that if we're trying to get somewhere, if we're trying to go towards something, we have to start from where we are currently. We can't start from where we wish we were. We can't start from where we think we are. We have to start from where we actually are, or we can't have any hope of actually getting there. And quite honestly, those two ideas, kind of in combining them, not knowing how something will feel or how to really bring that future to myself, alongside of not completely knowing how to assess where I am currently in comparison to that goal, to that end state, it's demotivating. It's put me in a spot sometimes where it feels like I don't even know how or where to start. Throw on top of all of that the idea that the industry often gives us, well, if you want to accomplish something, find someone who's done what you're trying to do and just follow what they did. Just listen to their steps and do what they did. Well, wait a minute. I have to start from where I am, and the likelihood of finding someone who's in the same place or was in the same place where I currently am, and knowing that those steps will therefore get me in exactly the same place that they're in now, actually doesn't seem very likely either. I've sometimes compared the idea to looking at a Rubik's Cube. On a Rubik's Cube, we all know what a solved state looks like. There is only one solved state, and each of the faces in that solved state are a specific color, and it's solved, it's done. But the way the math works on a Rubik's Cube, because there are so many pieces, there's 3 pieces by 3 pieces by 3 pieces, as you multiply that out, and each of those pieces can be moved and put in different positions, the math on it shows that there are 43 quintillion different possible permutations for a Rubik's Cube to be in. And some of those permutations are right next to solved. They are very simple. You make a move and it goes from being one step away from being solved to being solved. But there are also other permutations that are a whole lot different than what solved looks like. I mean, looking at the cube right here, you can see, and I haven't scrambled this really well yet. There are moves I've made, but just that idea, I want to find a guru who's gotten to where I'm going, but I need to start from where I am, not necessarily from where they were. How does their pattern for solving the cube get me any closer? And I don't know if you've ever been in that boat, and obviously we're not talking about solving a cube per se, But whatever goals are important to you, whatever it is that you're trying to solve, I know that it's not uncommon for the voices in your head to look at someone else's cube that looks every bit as scrambled as yours and still notice that their cube has different colors showing on different faces in different positions than yours. Obviously, if that's the case, you're not going to make the exact same moves as that other person. And if there are quintillions of possible permutations, how are you possibly going to be able to get there? Well, in learning to solve a cube, one of the other things that I learned was that mathematicians didn't just put time into solving how many possible permutations there are. They've also put some serious time into solving what is the minimum number of moves that can be made to solve a cube from any of those quintillions of possible permutations. Google actually lent some computing power to solving this, and the answer was just over 20 moves. You could be in any possible permutation of those quintillion permutations, and you could solve a Rubik's Cube if you know the right steps to take in just over 20 moves, which to me is boggling. The math doesn't add up somehow. And I will actually put a link to a video in the description here that talks about the math of how they got to 43 plus quintillion as that number. And that will help be able to understand a little bit of what I'm saying here. But the reason that number is so large, based off of what they explain in that video, is factorials. Every time I move the cube a certain way, it opens up other possibilities for other moves, and the factorials upon factorials upon factorials multiply themselves out to be 43 quintillion different possible permutations. But the neat thing, if we're trying to solve our problems, is there are algorithms. There are, I would say in life, rather than algorithms, let's focus on the idea of there are principles that we can learn that can be applied to just about any problem and will get us towards our solutions. Earlier, I mentioned the idea of following a guru, following someone who has done what you're trying to accomplish and just doing what they have done, doing what they tell you to do. And I mentioned that while that's great, I have had life experiences that are different than theirs. And even if we're starting from what appears to be the same place, their explanation of their solution may still not be translated correctly by my way of thinking. And I could follow all of the steps, quote unquote, and still not end up in the same spot because I misunderstand. Or even if I don't misunderstand, I do what I'm being told to do, but I do it with different energy. I do it with different thought patterns, and I just don't get the same result. And I think we've all seen that happen. People try things all the time that are turnkey, that are set up to be anyone could do this, and they still don't get the same results. And where I was going with that, once we start learning the algorithms to solve the cube, there's a layer in there that's not often talked about. And that is, it's not just instructions that say, turn this side, turn that side, turn this side. The instructions before telling you to turn anything tell you to observe the cube. Slow down for a minute and look at what is going on the cube, and then decide based on what's going on, I am going to start on this face or on this face or on this face, and I'm not going to worry about solving the whole problem. I'm going to make the moves that need to be made just to solve the face that I am looking at right now. And the magic of that is, for one, it reduces the problem, but for two, mathematically, if I have solved just this one space, all of a sudden, instead of having 3 by 3 by 3, what's left to solve on the cube is just 2 by 3 by 3. And the factorials are reduced significantly. I don't think we recognize sometimes in life how much, even though we still feel like we're far, far away from the end state that we want, I don't think we realize in life how much by making small little moves, we are reducing the quintillion permutations down to quadrillion permutations, down to trillion permutations, down to billion permutations, down to millions, down to thousands. And we are grabbing at things that seemed so far out there and so impossible and bringing them into our space by simply following the right principles and moving forward. I do think it's important to find someone who's done what you're trying to do. I do think it's important to learn from them, but I think it's important to learn from them in a way that isn't focused on what are the exact steps that they've taken, as much as it's important to figure out who have they become and how do I become like the kind of person that has solved the problem. It's important to look at how do they think, how do they approach not just the problem, but also the solution. How do they approach feeling about the problem and feeling about the solution? When you can learn to do that, when you can learn to be mentored by someone, not to know the magic words to say or the magic steps to take, but the right way to be, think, and feel, then you're onto something. Then you empower yourself to look at where you actually are and where you're looking to go and what obstacles lay between here and there, and think them through and feel them through on your own instead of hoping that some other guru is going to have the answer because the previous guru's answer didn't actually get you where you were going. I hope this is helpful. I hope that the metaphor of the Rubik's Cube makes sense, that the idea that there are quintillions of possible scenarios, but that math is reduced dramatically all the way to the point of solved within just over 20 moves, translates for you. The problems you're facing, I don't want to minimize them. I don't want to not acknowledge them and understand how big they are for you and what you're going through. But I also don't want to let you be captive to the story that you're telling yourself about them. I don't want to leave you in a spot that feels impossible because of the math. I would rather help you see that even though there may be some learning to do, and even the word algorithm sounds scary at times, when you start, instead of learning algorithms, to really learn the principles that life is built around, you empower yourself to pull things into your current realm of possibility that didn't sit there before. My goal is your happiness. My goal is your fulfillment. And it's possible. And it's possible within fewer moves than you think. Like I said, I hope this is hopeful to you. I hope you will like it. I hope you'll subscribe. And I hope you'll share it with somebody who needs to see it. Thanks for spending time with me today.